everyone, and welcome to Career Bootcamp 2022. I'm Laura Jones. I go by she, her, and I'll be moderating today's session on strategically building your learning plan to connect to your needs. The sister French segment is being held simultaneously in a different webinar. I need to start by acknowledging that I'm speaking with you from the prairies on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. I was thinking most of you would be joining from other parts of the country, but I see there are a lot of Winnipeggers and prairie folks here. But for everyone, I encourage you to take a moment to recognize and acknowledge the territory where you live and its history. As we move through today's session, please share your comments and questions in the chat space by using the Q&A to signal buttons at the bottom of your screen. You might have seen that already. If you use the thumbs up button to signal which questions you like, that will signal to us the most popular questions. Those will float to the top, and those will be the questions we ask our panel. On to the learning objectives for the segment. After the session, you should be able to recognize the importance of completing mandated learning plans and the accompanying discussions, create a targeted learning plan for your own career aspirations, identify what is possible and what is likely for learning plan approvals, and also to frame discussions with your manager, including justifying approval for your learning. Today, we're very lucky to have three dynamic panelists joining us. Helen Daniels joined the Government of Canada in 2010 after 20 years working in nonprofit, education, and private sectors. In her 11 years with the GOC, she's held 7 roles in 5 different departments, including 3 years with Canada's free agents as a talent manager and a free agent. She's now happily landed at the Canada Revenue Agency, where she's helping with the digital transformation of human resources. Helen is a self-proclaimed learning nerd, coach, and evangelist for employee experience and effective talent management. She's also a part-time instructor for Positive Spaces. Elissa Dodd began her career in the public service in 2009. She was the Ontario Regional Chair for the Canada Revenue Agency's Youth Professional Network from 2016 to 2018. In 2018, Elissa was awarded for excellence in the category of Future Leader. In 2019, she was accepted as one of Canada's free agents and took on an assignment with the Canada Revenue Agency to assist with implementing character leadership. And finally, Justin Ford. Justin worked as a special needs educator in high schools, focusing on vocational training for students with specific educational and accessibility needs before joining the government. While his entrance to the federal public service was unexpected, he has found his time with the school to be both enlightening and enriching, and believes education plays a pivotal role in government. Justin's worked with the Canada School of Public Service for 5 years and is an advisor on the GBA Plus file, as well as an events coordinator. Welcome to all of our panelists. All right, now let's dive in. Now, each time we discuss the subject, we're pretty shocked to find out a few things. For one, some employees don't know about learning plans. Secondly, some new public servants don't realize they can influence what is on their individual learning plans. And last, some staff aren't aware that their departments have dedicated budgets set aside specifically for their own learning. Reflecting on that, each of our panelists is going to share some perspective. Then we'll get a chance to ask them some tough questions. So we'll start with Justin, who's going to share thoughts on his experience with learning plans. Over to you, Justin.
Thanks so much, Laura, and thanks everyone for turning out today. I'd also like to thank the Federal Youth Network for, again, successfully organizing one of the most important conferences in the GOC. So kudos to my colleagues there as well. And thank you to my fellow panelists for being here with me today. It's kind of interesting for me to be on this side of the screen because, as you saw in my bio, I'm the events coordinator at our team. So I'm usually behind the scenes, pulling the levers and doing that sort of thing. So forgive me if I gesticulate a lot. So I've got a few things I'd like to talk to you all about today, but definitely one of them is my recent experience with some of my first, learning planning. And I was recently hired as an indeterminate here at the Canada School of Public Service. And thank you very much, Helen. And really dove deep into my learning plan. And, it goes without saying that as an employee of the school, learning plans are taken very seriously here. And, my director and I sat down and really carved out a path for me and what would be best for my career. So upon my entrance at the school, as many of you probably have done yourself, there's a lot of mandated learning. Mandatory training that you have to take. Welcome to the GOC, GC Docs training, that sort of thing. But then moving beyond that was really a frank and really enriching conversation with my director on what a learning path for me could look like. So to give you a bit of context, I'm classified as an EC. So that's technically sort of like the policy analyst sphere. And, that's a pretty wide berth of talents and skills that you have to learn. And some people go to university and take a master's in, let's say, public administration and public policy. There are other outside sources that offer training in this, but at the school, we are building forever a repertoire that sort of caters to each functional community. So whether it be HR, comms, policy, procurement, you name it, we have that training in-house. So luckily I've been able to access all that learning quite easily, with no costs associated. That's sort of one of the benefits of the school has to offer, is that, if you're working on a limited budget, we still have that. But moreover, it gave me an opportunity to really reflect and explore what a career as an EC could look like. And I'll be completely honest, I am lucky that I have a spouse who is a policy analyst as well, and she's a few levels ahead of me and was able to provide me with some opportunities and exposure on what that career path looks like. But in my exploration of my learning path, it also helped redefine the roles within my position. So, it was all done as part of my PMA. Your performance management, your annual sort of evaluation. And I was able to sort of pick and choose. So it's not purely policy I'm interested in. As you saw, I'm also the lead on the Gender-Based Analysis Plus file. So I'm very interested in things like intersectionality, gender-based analysis, that sort of thing. And I was able to sort of cull from a large list, internal and external to the school, to help bolster that sort of knowledge of mine. So my studies background come from psychology, social sciences, education, and I had a lot of that in my bank already. But how to apply that within the frame of government is what I needed to sort of carve out for myself. And without getting into a labored list of all those fun courses I get to go take, I was lucky to have a support management, supportive spouse, and also supportive colleagues who directed me to courses that they felt would be beneficial to me, because I'm still nascent in this position. I've only been in the government for 5 years. I've only been an indeterminate for a year and almost 2 years now, I'll say. So, that's fun, but still, developing those skill sets going forward. And for me, it's a particular situation because there's not a lot of hard or what we call big P policy work done at the school. There is, but not as much as, let's say, a line department. And I really wanted to get some of that, skill set, so that one day when I do move to a new position, I have what, hiring managers are looking for. And I think for me right now, that's really the goal of my learning path, is finding out what are hiring managers looking for, what skill set should I bring above and beyond what I already have, and, what courses and learning opportunities will help me navigate the broad world of policy. So, it's really about having those frank discussions, giving your manager an idea of what you're looking for, acknowledging the fact that you're probably not going to be in one position for 25 years. The nature of government is and I think it's one of the benefits of government is you get to move around, you get to experience different things. So, when you have that support at that managerial level, when you have colleagues who are willing to take the time to weigh in and help you, it's just about talking to folks. And it's been an enriching experience, and the courses I've taken have been fantastic to date. I'm learning how to write briefing notes. I'm learning how to, do elevator pitches, stuff like that, which, might sound trivial, but knowing how to write a proper briefing note is a very important skill set to have as an analyst. Same thing with elevator pitches. When I talk to DMs, I don't have 2 hours to convince them of an idea. I've got to do it like that. So, try to get an idea of where you want to go. Try new things. Don't be afraid to delve into areas that you might not be familiar with, because all those different opportunities will provide you with the pieces you need going forward. So I think, until I dive later on into what the school has to offer, my personal experience, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Thanks very much. And it sounds like networking and getting advice from your network has been really key. And I want to take that elevator class.
I'll send you the link.
I need that. Okay, and how about we move over then to Helen? Do you have any thoughts?
Oh, I have thoughts for sure. Yeah, that's why I'm a learning nerd. I have a lot of thoughts about this stuff. I've worked in the fields of learning and development my entire career. And so I've developed some opinions, and some of them are actually informed too. But there's a few things I'd like to, I guess, in this first little pitch that I'd love to say, and some of them totally just roll on to what Justin offered originally, but that everyone in your work, you'll be learning all the time. Sometimes you will set aside a time to be learning, and sometimes you'll just be learning because you're trying something new. And so, even the notion that learning is something that is separate is a bit unnecessary. You'll just be learning throughout your career. Anytime you're stretching, you're trying something new, then you're learning. And so that's something I like to talk about a lot, because there's an idea that learning happens through courses, that you need to go to some kind of schooling model or something to learn. And while that is one way to certainly learn, the best way to learn anything is to actually do the thing that you want to learn. And so depending on where you are in your skill development, you'll do that a little differently. So I'm just going to share a few ideas of ways that you can develop skills without taking courses, depending on where you are. So if you're a newbie and you want to learn a new skill, you're really early stages of just kind of even understanding, like, what is this skill and how might it be used, then good things to do are to explore around the topics. And you can do that by taking a course at the school. There's really good content there. But you can also, there's like these massive open online courses, they're called. They're available through platforms, and they're free most of the time. And you can just take a university level course or any kind of course. Sometimes they're long, sometimes they're just a webinar, just to start to get a little bit more understanding about the topic, using, if you're interested in digital, like the Canada School of Public Services, busrides.ca, their kind of blog posts are a great way to just get some basic understanding. Other things to do, though, if you're not really interested in self-study or you want something a little more dynamic, is you can job shadow. Like, you can actually just ask someone who's doing the work that you're interested in and just follow them around for a little while, have them share their screen and go to a meeting with them. Take Me With You is an amazing program, which is basically just a way of sanctioning, like asking someone senior to bring you along to a meeting that you normally wouldn't get to go to. It's another really valid learning tool and absolutely can be put on your learning plan many times, not even just once. So Take Me With You, shadowing, going to an event. Those are some great things. Joining a community of practice. And this is good for someone who's a newbie, but also who is kind of at the stage where they're learning to apply a new skill or embed a new skill. Joining a community of practice is an incredible way to develop your skills, because you'll be doing work in collaboration with other people. You'll be co-designing things sometimes, and you can learn that way. Or maybe it's joining a committee, like the Young Professionals Network. Elissa is a great example of this. Well, in fact, most people here is a great example of, like, by joining a committee, you do things and you learn about how government works, about how to put on events, who works where, who your network is. So building a network is another incredible learning strategy, and you can put that on your learning plan. It can be a learning goal that you want to build your network, and then your manager can help you connect to people who can help you do that, or you can, just maybe take some time every week or every 2 weeks to focus on networking, which primarily is like reaching out to people and having little coffees with them and hearing about what they do for work. So, really legitimate learning strategies that don't involve taking courses, don't even cost money, but just cost some time. And so that's why you put them on your plan. And then if you're like really skilled already, but you want to keep developing your skills even deeper because there's so much need for really deep skills, teaching or mentoring others is an incredible way to do that. As soon as you try to teach something, you learn it at a much deeper level. And again, like right now I'm teaching at positive skills, which is the LGBTQ2 plus series of courses that the school offers. And, I'm not so much learning about the content, but I'm learning a lot about the diversity and inclusion, things that we're doing in the government. I'm also learning about virtual facilitation because the courses are virtual. So, I have a lot of background, and now I'm just really going deep by teaching it to others. So that's that. And I guess the other thing is that you need to know your gaps, because learning is about filling gaps. So like, you're here and you want to go here. If you know where that is, then you know what the gap is, and you can do some of those things that I already suggested. If you don't know what your gap is, then it's really important to figure out where is the work going, what's happening in the workplace that you'll need to keep your skills up to date with. And everything is changing right now, and you're aware of that. We're in this pandemic, like everything's up for grabs in a lot of ways. Nobody really knows where we're going, and that's just being really frank. But that doesn't mean you can't prepare. There are some things that we kind of know in general are skills that are necessary for now and the future, and those are human interpersonal skills. So, we used to call them soft skills, but they're actually the hardest skills to develop. But skills of collaboration, of working together, of communicating, of giving and receiving feedback are incredible skills that, again, can go on your learning plan, and then you can build strategies to develop those. And the other is digital skills. So knowing the GC digital standards and having a look at those and picking the one that interests you and that's relevant to the work that you want to do now or in the future. And then, start with the bus rides, understand more about what that digital skill is, and then think about how you might grow that by doing some of the work. Lots more to say, but I feel like I'm coming up to time, so I'll stop there, and hopefully some questions will bring things out. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing some insight and talking about exploring informal or less conventional ways of learning, but super effective learning strategies. So thanks so much for that, Helen. And over to you, Elissa. Do you have any thoughts to share with the group?
I do. Thank you, Laura. A lot. I would just say that I concur with everything that Justin and Helen said, of course. And I just wanted to add, so they gave you a lot of different ideas of what could be put on a learning plan. And it is important what Helen just said about how sometimes it's difficult to see a year ahead, 5 years ahead, and make that plan for your career and know what to put on your learning plan. And you might agonize over it. You might look at, all of these different courses, mentoring, coaching, job shadowing, all of these things, and you might be overwhelmed. And so I want to touch on, what do you do once you're overwhelmed? Because certainly you can go to your colleagues, you can go to your manager, and you can say, I really want to make a really robust, really impactful learning plan, but I don't know how to do it. And they can walk you through exactly how to do it, but they can't tell you what should be on there, what matches you. So if you're in that space where you're not quite sure what's the best move for your particular career, I would say just really focus on what lights you up, what gets you excited, what you really love to do, because learning in any way, shape, or form is good for you. It's good for your brain. A lot of skills, no matter what course you're taking, a lot of skills are transferable, especially like those soft skills Helen was talking about. I think we should probably call them warm skills or something like that, Helen. They're not quite soft, but they're warm and fuzzy. And so Marcella, I'll let you know. Okay, you can put it up. Perfect. So hopefully you can take a little screenshot of this, guy. So if you're overwhelmed, my advice is just to get clear on your learning goals, and just don't be overwhelmed. Just follow these simple steps. Number one, what is your current professional focus? Most of us, our current professional focus is to do our best in the role that we're currently in. The best way to move up and do well in your career is to do really well in the job you're currently in. So first focus on that, right? Number two, what's your next short-term goal? You could have a number of short-term goals, but what is the very next one, the most important one that you want to focus on? And then what is your long-term goal? Your long-term goal could be really pie in the sky, really crazy, but that's okay. But then you need to figure out, like Helen said, fill in those gaps, right? How do you get from your current professional focus to your next short-term goal and then to your next long-term goal? My biggest advice would be, though, and it served me well, is like stay focused on your short-term and your long-term goals, but be really flexible and be careful with those long-term goals because they will change and they probably should change because things are changing so fast in this world. I always tell people to be careful that you don't get yourself stuck because you're so focused on one goalpost in the future that you get stuck there and miss the opportunities that are passing you by, right? Justin talked about, he had that really open and honest conversation with his manager. Obviously, that's crucial. I mean, I understand that sometimes that's not easy. It can be really difficult depending on what position you're in, whether you're permanent or not, whether there is time and money for training, but you still should always be talking to your manager and just telling them, hey, this is kind of what I'm wanting to do over the next year, over the next 5 years. This is really where I want to go in my career. If you let it be known who you want to become, what you want to do, people will remember that and opportunities will start to find you. But if you keep it to yourself, no one will ever know. So your manager might come across an opportunity for job shadowing, an opportunity for mentoring and coaching. They might get extra money for training and they might not know what to do with it because you haven't had that conversation with them. One last little thing I did want to share too is I have been told no many times for things that I've asked for on my learning plan. And I have found ways to either put it off until it is the right time, or I found other ways to do that learning. Like Helen said, being part of professional networks. I just was reminded when Justin was talking about policy. I'm not in policy, but I volunteered to organize a policy conference. And I had nothing, I know nothing about policy, but I learned so much. And it was time away from my job, but it didn't cost any money. So my manager was willing to let me do that. And one last thing that Helen reminded me of is like, whether you love him or hate him, Elon Musk is right. You can learn anything online now. Anything. So if you want to learn something, you can find a way, whether your manager says yes or no. But when you're having that conversation with your manager, if you've already gotten really clear on your learning goals and what you want to take and why, you'll be able to articulate that to your manager and you've got a really good argument, right? So even if they might not be able to see your grand vision by looking at your learning plan, you'll be able to explain it to them and they're much more likely to say yes. Yeah, so that's what I've got for now.
Well, that's a lot. Thanks for giving us some practical ways to get started when our career path feels daunting. We don't know where to start, and then how to keep it going, keep that learning going. So thank you very much for your insight. We've touched already on learning plans, what to include, how to broach or have discussions with our managers, some networking aspects and different learning pathways. It's a lot to think about and to start putting into practice. But now we're going to get on to the question round, and we'll start with some Federal Youth Network questions for the panel. And while that's going on, this is your chance. I see a lot of people have already asked questions in the chat, but it's your chance to add your questions now. Give thumbs up to those that you'd really like to hear answered, because we'll be moving to the open questions after this session or section. So we're going to start off with a question for Helen. And the Federal Youth Network question for you, Helen, is What's the most outrageous thing you've ever seen on a learning plan?
That's a great question. I had to think about this long and hard. I guess I have two answers. One was somebody who wanted basically 3 degrees in 3 different topics to do in 2 years. And I was just like, it's too much. Can't do all that. Like, so, being realistic is really important. Learning new things is hard. It takes time. And I'm kind of getting this little pitch in here because I want to say it to you, but the timing really matters. Like, know where you're at in your life. I'm always talking about this metaphor of climbing and camping. I'm a little bit famous for it, as much as people can be famous for these things, but in your life, there's a time to climb, which is to stretch, try new things, progress, whether it's upwards in your career or, laterally, like change disciplines or functions. And that takes a lot of energy. And so you got to choose those times for the times when you're feeling well, your family, your home life is fairly stable, things are going pretty well. That's a great time to climb. If that's not the case, if you've got a lot going on personally or whatever, then it's time to camp. And there's no shame in that. There's this sort of illusion that you always need to be moving up in your career or like stretching. It's not healthy. It's what every career is, a mix of climbing and camping. And so the camping timing is when you just need to kind of step back and just really do a good job at what you're doing. Like Elissa said, just kind of rock your skills, like just deepen your practice. And then, there will be a time to climb again. So anyway, that's the first thing, like don't put too much on. But the other shocking thing is that learning plans with nothing on them. And I guess I realized that that's mostly because people don't really know how to do it. And so I'm just going to give a little plug for something that I've put in the chat, but it's this tool that I kind of, it's very rough, but it's kind of meant to help guide you through the questions that you need to ask yourself when you're creating a learning plan. And it links to some of the things that I see people asking about, like, where do you find these key areas of practice? What are the goals? What is a massive open online course? What do you access them? So if you go to that tool, again, not beautiful, but it's just a document that helps guide you through the questions that you need to answer. So it's there for you. And I hope that all of you will never put nothing on your learning plan, because your manager, it's part of their job to help you learn and develop. And so even if part of your learning and development is just like, I just want to keep that getting, I just want to learn how to like balance all my stuff and feel good about what I'm doing right now, that's valid. Like, yeah, it doesn't need to be some big lofty thing. Enough from me. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now over to Elissa. Your Federal Youth Network question is, what is the difference between mentorship versus coaching?
Okay, so I've had a lot of mentors, not a lot of coaches. I think they've all been pretty informal too, right? So you don't have to try and find a mentor or a coach formally. So mentors are they're like a role model, right? So you develop a relationship with them, they mentor you, they're kind of like a cheerleader, you can go to them for advice. Whereas a coach, and sometimes mentors coach you too, that's why there's that, some people aren't sure what's a mentor, what's a coach, but coaches are more like subject matter experts on something that you really want to dive into and learn more about, right? So let's say I want to learn how to do an elevator pitch. I could find a coach who's really good at doing elevator pitches, and they would be helping me with that skill set. Whereas a mentor could be helping me with so many things. They would be helping me with pretty much everything to do with my career. So having a mentor and a coach to your learning plan is always great. But when you do it, make sure you know what you really want to get out of it. Because I've had times where, the one time I did sign up for a formal mentorship relationship, my first meeting with them, they were like, what do you want to get out of this? And I was like, I don't know. So I didn't get much out of it because I didn't know why I wanted a mentor. I didn't know what I needed their help with. So highly recommend those. In very rare circumstances, is a manager going to say, no, you can't have a mentor. No, I'm not going to set up coaching, because, typically it's free. All that it takes is some time. So hopefully that made sense. The difference between a coach and a mentor, sometimes there's some overlap, but coaching is for something that you want to learn, a specific skill you want to learn, and a mentor is more a role model who can support you. Yeah.
Thank you. And I know Justin has some thoughts on mentorship and coaching too. I don't know if you want to add anything there, Justin.
I think she nailed it. So thank you. No, you're brilliant.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then you've got your own question, Justin. How do I prepare for my first conversation and for ongoing conversations? I'm guessing this is centered on learning.
Definitely. My best advice, do your research. Be the captain of your own ship. So go to the Canada School website. Look what's being offered. I'm going to take this moment to shamelessly plug where I work, but at the Canada School, we have a number of different business lines that all offer a sort of host of different learning. And you've got everything from, your Government of Canada and public sector skills. So that's where you're going to learn about the foundations of governance, what the GOC looks like, and some of those specific skills that are related to communities of practice or functional communities, right? Your policy folks, your HR, your comms, your procurement, so on and so forth, as well as leadership training. But, that's going to come for all of us a little bit later, or for many of us. You also have your transferable skills. These are skills you could take with you inside or out of the government, right? Some of those warm skills or soft skills or hot skills, whatever you want to call them. But these are skills that are instrumental to you no matter your role in the government, or even if you're in government. You're going to have your digital academy. I mean, look, the pandemic has taught us one thing, if nothing else, that we need to be, flexible in how we work. We need to be able to adapt quickly. And I think we did a pretty good job at it. And I think now more than ever, things like the digital academy at the school are an important team and an important learning catalog to come learn more about, because we're going to see a new reality that has never been seen before. You've got my sister, or my sort of other side of the coin shop, which is the Indigenous learning, and they focus all on reconciliation. They're looking at the history and current realities of Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples in Canada and their relationship with the government. And I think in this time of reconciliation, respect, recognition, it's important that a lot of us go, especially folks like me. Totally recognizing them, a cisgendered, white, middle-aged, or soon-to-be middle-aged next week dude. It's important that we keep learning. And then lastly, and here's a real shameless plug, is my team, which is the Respectful Inclusive Workplace team. And our learning catalog centers around exactly what you hear: respect, inclusivity, equity. We deal with topics such as anti-racism. We deal with topics such as gender-based analysis plus, LGBTQ2. So Helen's work is in direct collaboration with our team, with my good colleague, Susan. Come see what's offered. And as you see in that breadth, not all of it is like, a learning manual on how to do one specific task. There's a breadth of learning. There's philosophical, there's cultural, there's direct tasks. So do your research. So when you walk into that first conversation, you show your manager that I'm interested in this, and that. They might be more likely to just say, oh, okay, you obviously have a clear plan, and don't ever hesitate to ask for advice, like I said, from colleagues or leaders. But do your research, and then go outside the school, because the school isn't the only place. As much as I like to sort of trumpet the horn of the school, there's a lot of great learning out there. Another one that I was seeing all the ones pop up for me, the elevator pitch folks, go check out Apolitical. They have free online courses. This is a 5-week course where every week something drops in my inbox. I do it on my time. My manager, my director was very eager to let me do it, because it's not like I'm dedicating X amount of hours a day away. This is something you do side of desk. So do that. And then ongoing conversations is sort of the same thing. Keep up that research, keep up that sort of exploration. And I think one really great place to explore topics that you might not be so aware of are the event series. So for example, the school, as well as, external to government learning, shops, they offer a host of events, and these are really easy. This is a 90-minute consumable, panel discussion similar to what we're doing here, where you can learn about an event and get that sort of first sort of introduction to it, and let you know if this is something you want to commit more to. Because I think, we all want to learn as much as possible. Like Helen, I'm a learning nerd. I come from education. This is, I'm definitely biased in this one. but that's a really nice place to at least get a first inclination of what interests you. So do your research, talk to your colleagues, listen to the advice, but come prepared with a list, because like, Elissa said, if you don't ask, you won't get it. So, ask, be bold in your requests, and hopefully something will come with it.
Yeah, I like that, and I agree, and I really like joining the communities of practice as a great intro to a field to explore, and I find that it's easier to get approval because it's free, right? It's just your time. So I agree with those, and we have more questions, but it's open to whichever of the panelists can raise your hand first. So get ready. The next question is, when in your career should you be looking for a career guide? Stop fighting. Okay, Justin, go for it.
Always. When isn't there a time? When is there a point in your career that you can't learn from others? I mean, I really think, I do a lot of work in events, like we said in my introduction, and I get to work a lot with the upper echelons of government, the ADMs, the DMs, and whatnot. And while so many of us are intimidated by these folks, they're the first to admit it. They're just like us, and there's so much even they have to learn. Look at the shifting cultural landscape going on, not only nationally, but globally. That's something we should all be aware of. That's something we should all be embedding in our day-to-day interactions and should influence the work we do going forward. Not all learning has to be like, I'm trying to think, I used to teach trigonometry. Like trigonometry, very clear set of rules, you learn the rules, you do it. But there's a lot of learning to do, and there's a lot of guides. So take that time. Most folks here at the Federal Youth Network, Career Bootcamp Conference, we're in our nascent early stages of career. This is a great opportunity, but every step of the way, there's somebody who's been there before you and somebody who can show you the ropes and give you some great insight. So never be afraid to learn. And the moment, as a professor educator, the moment you think you know everything is the moment you've lost everything, right? Be curious, be adventurous. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations, things you're not sure of, because it'll only benefit you. So I say there's never a point not to.
Thanks. Anyone else disagree with Justin? Do we want to have a debate? No? Okay. Well, this one is for each of the panelists. So wondering everyone's take on what one course would you recommend that gets put, what one course would you recommend to put in a learning plan? I'm not sure like the context, but Helen, go for it.
Yeah, so digital standards. I can't say this enough. Some organizations have really embraced these, others are just really starting their journey. But if you look up GC digital standards, these are the ways that the public service will be working in the future. This will affect everyone, no matter what kind of work that you're doing. The school has a really great suite of introduction to like Digital 101, I can't quite remember what they're called, but if you go to DC Campus, you can find them. So that would be my recommendation. If you can't get them through the school, Apolitical also has like a digital boot camp series, which I've taken as excellent as well.
Okay, thanks. And how about you, Elissa? Do you have a top choice course?
So I'm gonna use the school because I do love the school. So I would say, in particular, their courses on unconscious biases and anything anti-racism, because it touches every single thing we do, everything, whether it's professional or personal. And it's really important if you want to be really self-aware so that you can make good choices about what you're going to do with your life. You need to uncover those unconscious biases. And it, again, no matter what you're working on, there is, that underlying unconscious bias in there. So definitely check out those courses. Your managers aren't going to say no to that.
Yeah, important for everyone, not just public servants. I agree, absolutely. And how about you, Justin? What's your #1 course?
Well, I'm consciously biased towards this, and I'm going to take it from this and go one step further, which is GBA plus training. I think GBA plus is now, right? That intersectional analysis, and it's erroneously thought of as purely a tool for analysts, but this is sort of understanding the impact of the work you do and how it impacts various communities, intersectional identities, folks across the country. And I think if you want to, work for Canadians, because that's essentially what we're here to do, right? You want to understand the impact your work's having. It's easy to forget that, there are millions of people that are affected by everything we do. And moreover, GBA Plus is, being behind the curtains of the training is very much expanding to all public servants. It's not just a policy thing anymore, folks. It's a HR thing. It's a procurement thing. I mean, I keep you listing the same functional communities, and for executives, it's about understanding the importance of making sure they give time to their employees to do robust GBA pluses. But I would say go take the GBA plus courses. Wage, Women and Gender Equality Canada have developed a wonderful introductory course that's also currently being updated to sort of bring in a more holistic intersectional sort of view. But if you want to do all those great things, you got to make sure you're doing it right and you're, bringing the most impact to the most people. So I'd say GBA plus. Again, consciously biased to it because I might be leading that file right now at the school.
There's going to be this huge spike, like GBA plus courses gained popularity so much.
Well, on that note, actually, folks, the school is updating their platform right now, and coming mid-February, we're going to have a brand new look and feel. And with that is also coming some updated coursework. So, keep an eye on the school's website and take the courses. So,
Okay, thanks all for your top choice courses. And we've got one more Federal Youth Network question for you, whoever would like to take it. You've touched on networking a bit, but diving more into the network, aside from my manager, who else should I go to for advice about my learning plan? Who would those key people be for you? Helen?
Yeah, I can take that. So if you're a more junior person, you could talk to a more senior person, like just someone who's been around longer. So I joined the public service 20 years into my career. But it was like starting from ground zero. There's a whole world in here. I didn't understand what people were talking about for a whole year. It took me 2 years to literally figure out how to apply in a job process. And even then I didn't understand how to succeed. Like those are a lot of things that are different in the outside world than they are inside. So even, coming in at like, I wasn't quite 40, but I felt like I was like 20, in terms of how much I knew. So I talked to people who had more experience in the public service, who were doing jobs that were interesting to me. So, really, and in this virtual world, it sometimes takes a little bit more effort to do that. So when you're on a team, if you like how someone is working, then ask them like, who do you talk to? Who's your network? So, really starting with people who are working in a way that you would like to emulate, or who are doing work that interests you. Set up coffee, ask them to tell you a little bit about the work, and then ask them to tell you someone that you also should talk to, so you can kind of build your network that way. And eventually it becomes really organic. But I spend a lot of time networking. Like every week I have at least 2 coffees, just half an hour, and I just keep in touch with people. I keep asking people, like, tell me about your work, and I always offer, is there something I can do to help you? And and that is everything for me. I frankly, my network has gotten me where I am today, and that's how I do a lot of my learning, is just by reaching out to people I know and asking them questions. So, people like to help each other out, and don't be afraid to ask. And so that's my advice on that question.
I just want to emphasize that no one's going to say no. I ask people all the time, if you come in the right way, you know, not self-serving, but just to hear. People love to talk about themselves, right? So people aren't going to say no, and just make sure you give back, right? So like Helen said, like she also, when people come to her, she also gives back. But don't be afraid to reach out to people. Just, you know, be nice about it.
Getting the nod of concurrence from Justin too, I think. All right. Well, thanks for that. And I think now we're going to move on to the live questions. So we'll see. I see there's one that's heating up with 40 thumbs up. So we will dive in and continue, crowd, to pose your questions and to give the thumbs up. So we're going to start off with, what if you don't know what your career should be? Are there courses you can add to your learning plan to help you figure it out? Over to you, Helen.
I can take that. I mean, there are probably courses, I can't direct you to one in particular, but there are all kinds of ways you can kind of get clarity about where you might want to go in the world. Part of that is an activity of looking backwards. There are lots of great books about this. One that's just on top of my head called What Color is Your Parachute? It's quite an old book, but it's been redone many, many years. The little tool I put in the chat is also intended to do that, help you with that a little bit. So look backwards and ask yourself a couple of questions like, what really lit me up? What work did I love? And where did I feel like I was being really well used? Like my heart was involved. I felt like I was doing something really worthwhile, because a good career is a balance between like it lighting you up and you also feel like you're being of service. Those are two things that we know that make a career really rewarding. So kind of like, what does the world need from me, and what do I have to give, and where do we find the place? And the best way to do that is look backwards, but also talk to people around you and ask them, because sometimes it's a real blind spot for us. What are our special gifts? And everyone has unique gifts. But if you talk to people who know you well, and even those who don't know you well, like maybe some of your colleagues even, ask them like, what is it that I'm doing when I seem most alive? And if you think about this, you know, if you're interacting with someone they're really lit up, that says something about their passion. And look at like, what is it you're doing in those moments where you're really lit up, or what's the topic? And that's kind of information for like where, if you really have no idea where you want to go, that can kind of start to help guide you. And then you kind of want to look at like, where's the world going, and what might the world be asking of me? Where, you know, what's happening in the government? We're here to serve Canadians. Where the heck is Canada going, and all that? And that's where, you know, I'm saying, like, look at those digital standards, look at also the priorities of the government. I mean, there's really exciting work that's happening. So get familiar with those. And if you don't know what those are, then that's something you can put on your learning plan and say to your manager, like, I want someone to help me understand, like, what are the priorities of this organization? How do I know more about that? What are the trends that are coming? And again, you can use your network, like ask people, how do you know where to go with your career? And frankly, a lot of it's just happy accidents too. So it's really kind of a career is a mishmash of like some goals and focus, and then some happy accidents. Yeah, so I'm sure the other panelists have things to say about that, but those are a few places to start.
Go for it, Justin.
Again, a great place to get a breadth of knowledge about what's happening in the government. Some of the bigger issues is events, you know, or introductory courses. The school offers a lot of self-paced introductory courses, so you could do it on your own time, or look at events of topics that interest you. You could think about it in multiple of ways. I mean, you could think about sectors. Are you interested in science, economics, stuff like that? Are you interested in social work, like more social spheres? You know, ESDC, they have a wonderful college there as well that does a lot of fantastic training. So, you know, take the time to tune in, to listen, to read. And I have to reiterate what Helen says too, is that, you know, there are government priorities, and every government that comes in brings in a new set of priorities, and it'll always change. And, you know, while it's our job to remain neutral and do the best work we can, regardless of who's, you know, sort of making those decisions, I think there are certain, you know, greater drivers that will keep government moving in this direction that we're going right now. And, you know, really take the time to reflect on what interests you. You know, I really, you can call me a dreamer and hopeful, but I feel like if you come to work for the federal public service, it needs to be for more than just a paycheck and a pension. That golden handcuff joke is a little too true, but I don't see it in my day to day. I see people who are passionate, who care, and, find that spark within you and let that be your drive. And then last piece is exactly what Helen said. From what I'm learning more and more is that a career in the GOC is a series of, fun accidents, and you end up in these places you never envisioned. I never thought government was going to be my thing. It was never on my radar. I was born and raised in Montreal. The federal government was something happening in Ottawa. It was never a career choice for me. I went into education. I was special needs. I was doing all that. And then, my spouse, she went that route because she had familial experience, and I landed in it. And you know what? It was a fun accident, but just by chance as a FSWEP, which I'm sure many of the listeners here can attest to, you throw it all in the kitchen sink when you're filling out your FSWEP form. But I ended up at the school, and it was wonderful. And I realized I could stay in the things that interest me, which is education and sort of social justice and all that sort of stuff. And don't be afraid to take chances, fly by the seat of your pants. I know that's not for everybody. Some people very much need to know their carved out career plan, and that's possible too. But don't be afraid to just, let the winds take you where they will.
Thanks, Justin. Elissa, did you have something to add?
Real quick, is because I'm pretty sure you guys all noticed that I cringed when you read the question at the word should.
Okay.
There is no should. So, when I joined the public service and I joined CRA, 13 years ago, and I was like an entry-level job, and I was like, I'm gonna kick butt. I'm gonna do great. And I would talk to so many people. What should I do next? What should I do next? And they all told me, go and take accounting and become an auditor. Every single person told me that, and I fought against it, even though everybody told me that that's what I should be doing. I said, no, that's not for me. And I found a way. I found a way to volunteer doing different things and take different courses and go to events and be part of networks. And I found a way to build up the skill sets that I naturally loved. And I followed the dopamine. If you guys haven't heard that saying, I use it all the time. Follow the dopamine. What makes you happy, follow it. And so I really hope if you guys take anything away today, it's that, and it might confuse a lot of you, but there's no way that you should create your career. So that's why I cringed, and I just wanted to tell you guys why I cringed at that. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing why you cringed. It's helpful for everyone. All right, well, we're on to our next question then. And it is, how do you get identified for a talent learning plan? Anyone want to jump on this? Justin? Okay, go for it.
As far as my experience to date, it's all during your PMA, your performance management. And, there are different evaluations and whatnot, but that's usually when it's brought to your attention, at least from your management, and take the opportunity. I've heard some people say, and I don't quite understand why, careful of talent management plans, because, it just means more work for you. But from my personal experience, it's been enriching, and it opens up a lot of opportunities, and it commits your manager to allow you to take these courses. A lot of these questions I see popping up are, what do you do if a manager is not allowing you to go, take tell and tell course? But, again, just enrich yourself, and that PMA, work hard. Usually if you put your all into it, you get recognized for that, hopefully in the best of situations. I know that's not always the truth, but, doesn't mean you shouldn't stop, because again, you're not working for a manager. You're working for you're working for Canadians and all the people here and abroad as well. So, that's been my experience of how it ended up in my lap, but I'm sure there are other routes to get into that sphere.
Thanks. And Helen, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I do. I have some controversial opinions about talent plans. They're really an outdated model and not really appropriate. So I'll just say that, because they're not like whole notion that only some people deserve to have their talent supported is it's just wrong and outdated. And a little plug for the CRA, there's a whole redesign around performance going on, and they're taking away that notion that only some people get talent plans. The idea is that if you're an employee in the federal public service, you deserve to be supported to succeed in the work that you're doing now and in your future work. And that's what we're here for today. So, whether you're given a talent plan or not should be immaterial. But I do want to say that I read a bunch of the questions. I've answered a couple about how do I convince my manager to give me training if they won't. So first of all, let's just say you deserve learning. And so whether you have a talent plan or not doesn't really matter. Just go for it. But secondly, remember that you're here to do something, and that if you're not convincing your manager that what you're proposing is important enough, then I would suggest that maybe your business case isn't thought through. And this isn't something like a lot of people think, oh yeah, I'm going to get a degree and my work's going to pay for it. Those days have kind of passed, frankly. That used to be possible maybe 15, 20 years ago. It's not that it's not possible now, but it's not so easy. You need to make a really good case. So if that's what you're going for, by all means, set that as your goal. But you really want to make the case, how is my developed accreditation, how is me getting higher education or whatever, how is that going to help my organization? Everything has to be oriented to how it's going to help the organization, because you work for an organization, that's what you're here for. And so you need to make that really clear. If you invest in me, if my organization invests in me, here's what they're going to get back. And be expected to commit to some things. It's not unreasonable if your organization says, okay, we'll pay for you to take these courses, but you need to keep on working here for a while. Those are totally appropriate things to ask of somebody. If they're going to invest in you and they need something back, or if they say, we'll send you on this course, but we want you to bring the content back and then bring it to the team and teach people or show people how, that's totally legitimate. So this really is, it's a joint responsibility. If your manager's not understanding why it's important, think through the business implications. Think through that it's not just the course fee that counts, but also the time that you might be asking for away from your desk to take the course. Now, maybe you'll say, if you pay the fee, I'll do it on my own time. That is some agreement that sometimes people come to. Again, camping, climbing, depends on where you are in your life and what you feel like personally you're getting out of this. But, really think about, okay, so there's the course fee, there's the time spent, which is your salary, which your manager has to account for. So there's the work that's not getting done if you're working on a course. So you kind of need to have thought some of this through. And the more clear your business case is that you present to your manager, where you say, okay, here's my goal, here's where I want to be, here's how I want to be helping the organization, this is what it's going to take to get here, this is the investment on your side, this is the investment on my side, what do you think? And then it's a negotiation. So it doesn't mean it's automatically going to get yes. Maybe it's like, this year we can do this, and then we'll revisit it next year. That, again, is totally appropriate. So, definitely go for your goals. Think about how you want to be supported to achieve and advance in your career, but also think about how the organization is going to benefit. And if you've thought that through and presented like a fulsome business case, then it'll be hard for a manager just to dismiss it out of hand. It'll become a negotiation, and if it's not the right timing, bring it back 3 months later, come back to it. Your learning plan isn't a once a year activity, even though we kind of make it seem like it is. Like, you can ask for things on your learning plan at any time. Also, be familiar with business the budget cycles. That really matters too, because managers have a lot of money often to spend between kind of January and March. So that's a good time to ask for money. It's also a good time to ask for money at the start of the fiscal year, which is kind of like April, May, June. Harder times to ask for money are September, October, December, because people are trying to figure out their budgets at that time. So knowing a little bit about the budget helps you as well. So anyway, there's some thoughts about all that.
That's great. And I think what you're saying really speaks to how Justin said to be prepared and do your research before you broach those discussions with your manager. And then also what Elissa mentioned about, bring it up, even if they say no, then they know what you want and what your goals are, and it's on their radar, and they can keep it in mind and just keep trying. That's great advice. All right, on to the next one. What if my manager says I only need to do mandatory courses at my department? I've been in this situation. I'm listening.
I'd say do them. Get them over with. Not get them over with in the sense like, you know, they're a hassle, but do them and then go back and say, okay, I've done all the mandatory training. Now I need to take a next step. Show that initiative, you know. I think mandatory training is there for a reason. I will be the first to admit a lot of it's really, really sort of monotonous, click one slide at the next, but do it. There's a reason it's mandatory. And then once that's done, open up the conversation. Like Helen said, there's not just one time a year where you can ask. So you say, here, look, I've done it. It sort of ties into one of the questions I saw come up, like, you know, where do I list this training? It's all recorded. Like, for example, if you do that mandatory training through the school, we have records of all of it. So your learning is there for your, you know, hiring manager to see. Get it done. Show that you've taken the initiative and show that it didn't negatively impact your day-to-day, you know, responsibilities and work. And go from there. And if they're still, you know, hesitant, you know, it's a tough situation. Not every manager's made the same. I am lucky to be at the school where, you know, education is taken very seriously. So they let me do my take the courses I'm interested in, but show that initiative.
Sorry, Laura, you were muted there. I just have one thing to add, which Justin said it really well. Oh my gosh, and now I've forgotten. I hate it when that happens. It was so good too.
I could dive in with something you said earlier that I really thought of it when Justin was explaining that. And it was to try and take advantage of those informal learning opportunities, that it's not a course that you're paying for, it's joining a network, it's job shadowing, it's things that you can sell to your boss more easily, and they could be great learning opportunities to maybe pair with that mandatory coursework.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. Thanks for reminding me, because it also reminded me of what I wanted to say, which is that having been a manager for some time, managers don't have special training in how to suggest courses for their employees, and all they really know is like how managers have treated them in the past and kind of what they've seen. So if they've never had you know, really positive experiences with their managers being like, yes, how do I support you? Or, you know, they're just like really good at their job, but they don't know about learning and development, which is like 99% of the managers in the public service, not their specialty. So I think it's unfortunate that we put all this pressure on managers to ask them to help guide employees, because frankly, they just really don't know most of the time. And that's not a judgment on them. It's not their skill set. So, you know, the more you can do to bring the ideas to your manager, that's why I keep coming, like, do some research, you know, think about some ideas. And if you don't know, ask people around you, ask people who are doing interesting things. What do you put on your learning plan? And also all of those things that don't cost money, always start there, because so much of rich learning is just by getting involved in stuff. But yeah, cut the managers a break a little bit because, you know, like I would have employees come to me and say, you know, what should I put on my learning plan? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do you want? What do you want to do? Like, what are you interested in? What are your gaps? And, you know, if there was a particular gap that needed supporting, then I can help with that. Like, it's like you don't know how to use Excel and you need to really, you know, use it a lot more robustly, then that's a kind of like clear gap. But most gaps aren't that clear most of the time. So that's why I'm a big fan of talking to people and shadowing people and scanning to see what's going on in the world, and then picking something that's interesting and learning more about that. And then the path kind of unfolds a little bit.
That's also a great situation where if you have a mentor, they can help you through that tough situation. Get a mentor. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, on to the next question. Oh, there's a good one that's not at the top, but I really want to ask it, but I have to go to the top. Okay. When
You don't
taking
have to, Laura. You can
don't
go to the
have to?
question. Yeah.
Well, there was one on, I mean, that speaks to this, and it was, how do we do mentorship in a virtual world? And what are your suggestions? Just speaking to what you mentioned, Elissa, like, what would your suggestions be?
I mean, my mentorship relationships haven't changed except for they're just all online now. So the only difference is we're not face to face. We still talk about the same things. I can still go to them with any difficult situation. It might be difficult. Acknowledging the fact that it's probably more difficult to find a mentor now that we're not in the office, right? Because you can't just walk up to someone and say, hey, I see you're doing this job that I'm really interested in. Would you mind coaching or mentoring me? But most organizations have a mentoring program. So search out those mentoring programs. Your manager should know about mentoring programs. Or even if there's just somebody on your team that's maybe been around a little bit longer than you and, you really look up to them, don't hesitate to say, hey, maybe not, you don't have to even use the word mentor. Just say, I'd really love to get together maybe once a month and have a chat and discuss because, I really look up to you and the work that you do, and I'd like to learn from you. And over time, you develop a really close relationship, and you've got like that cheerleader in your back pocket who helps you through those difficult situations. Yeah, I mean, look for like those formal mentoring programs within your department. I mean, I'm sure you can use networks too. You can use a federal youth network. Go to their events. Those networking events, they've moved it all online, but we've found a way. You can find people to be your mentor. That's my advice.
Okay, thank you. And now I'm moving on to one that's more a practical kind of question on when you're taking courses through CSPS, who should be listed somewhere, or should those be listed on your CV? How will hiring managers know that we've taken all these development courses? Like, how should you highlight that?
Guess I'll jump in as the CSPS employee. No, you don't have to list them all. They're all available, right? We keep records of every course you take, and when you log into CSPS, your profile will have all the courses. I would suggest that the majority of the courses you take at school don't need to be listed, but there are a few that I would say highlight. For example, we offer a couple of premium courses. So those are really intensive, week-long trainings that delve deep into specific topics. That would be an example of something, yes, put that in your CV as, learning experience. Attending, a half-day conference on, the digital future, maybe not, but they're there for your managers, and most managers know how to access that learning because there is mandatory training and they need to ensure that you've done it. All the CSPS courses are free. I just saw a question pop in at the same time. So yes, they are free, but that record, that digital paper trail exists. And if a manager's ever that concerned, they could always ask you, and you could just go and print it out, and it's there available to you. But highlight the really big courses you take, because there are some courses that are really, or some specific skill courses that might be important to highlight.
Good call. So highlight those feature ones, and the rest you can look up if need be. Okay, how about this one? Oh, switching. Can your learning plan include time off? To take time off for learning days each week throughout the year? How can we ask to get our finances supported if outside the government? I'm guessing if this is a question about, it's a course that's not offered through CSPS, and can we be supported to take the time away from your job?
I can take that. Go ahead, Elissa, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've done it before, right? So I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat about language training. I don't want to get too much into that, but it took me 12 years until I got approval for language training. But before that, I said, do you mind if I take a couple hours one morning a week to do my own training and learning in French? And my manager supported that. So I just want to give you guys one example of, sometimes you find a way, right? Yeah, go ahead, Helen.
Thanks. Well, I don't really have anything to add. That was great. But yeah, it's done. It can be done. But again, think about it as a business case. Like really think about that you're wanting to pitch this idea. And so to show that you've thought it through, like if they give you this time, what are they going to get in return? And I know that sometimes those skills of like negotiating and selling are harder when you're more junior, but it's good practice. And it's okay to get feedback about it too. If you make a business case that's unrealistic, you'll get that feedback and then take it and learn and maybe negotiate down a little bit. This really, everything about your learning plan is kind of a negotiation. There's no one way to do it. The best thing to do is like take some risks and try it. If you're putting a business case together, get feedback from more senior employees or more experienced employees, run it by them before you take it to your manager. The more work you do ahead of time, the more chances are, whether your manager approves it or not, that they're really going to take it seriously, and that's what you want. So yeah, put some time into it, take it seriously. You're worth it too. Like invest the time in yourself in making a good case, because you're worth that.
That's great. Thank you. All right. I love this question because I think it's going to be great answers. How open should we be with our manager if our long-term goals are to work for a different department? Anyone want to jump into that one?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah, be open. Because two things can happen. One is they'll be like, great, I want to help you, get there. That could be one possibility. Or they say, whoa, you are so valuable, we don't want you to leave. What can we do to keep you here? I suppose there's other options, but those are two that I've seen happen. Like when someone says to me and says, I want to leave, if I really want to keep them, I'm going to do stuff to keep them. And they're kind of in a good bargaining position at that point. It's like you can have what they want. But if, also fit really matters. We know that your engagement as an employee is directly related to like how meaningful the work is to you, how fulfilling it is to you. And so if you're working in an organization where it's just not right, then, and you can convey that to your manager, then yeah, do your best. Because like managers right now have priorities on their list to help take care of your mental health, and engagement is directly connected to mental health. If you're at work and you're disengaged, then that is a bad situation for your mental health. And if you can't bring it up with your manager, then again, talk to other people who have more experience, have been around in the public service longer, ask for their advice. You can even talk to other managers to get advice or a mentor, those kinds of things.
Anyone have anything else to add to that one? Go for it, Justin.
Great question. I'm sort of in that situation right now myself. As I mentioned earlier, classified as an EC with my interest really being in policy and the big P if possible. The school's very limited in that. But I was very frank with my, not only director, but the DG I was under at the time, who I think fought pretty hard to get me the classification I was looking for, having come in as a student hire. Knew that my long-term, but that's what I think what I want to underline in this sentence is your long-term goals. So they understand that immediately you're still here. And any manager worth their salt, will know that by giving you those opportunities, they're encouraging you to work harder, they're encouraging you to experience more, and it will probably benefit them in the immediate term, right? I don't think there's a single manager in the government who is erroneous in their thinking that they're going to snag people for 25 years and that's it, that's all. That's not really the way the government works. Again, I don't highly promote the jump one place every 2 years. I still think there's value added in expertise. And if you sit in a position long enough, you gain that expertise. And, like Helen said, they will do their best. If you're proving your worth as an employee and you're bringing your best self day in and day out, they will work to hold on to you as long as possible. But there's no denying that we all move. And I've told my director my dream department one day that I'd love to get there. And what she's doing is giving me the tools now to develop the skill set I need to get into that specialized place, right? So be honest, be frank. And remember, you're hired at the government. Like, it's not like they're going to say, oh, well, you want to go there one day, we're going to let you go. Sorry, so long, farewell. I mean, we're protected to a degree, right? So, be honest, be frank, believe in yourself, and work hard for your goals, but do the best job you can do. And on another note, for classification jumps, because I've seen that here, it is possible. Whether you come in as an AS, a PE, EC, whatever it might be, there's possibilities to move, and that possibility comes with experience and trying new things, and like the mentorship we're talking about, or putting your name forward to try with a new project. Don't feel like you've entered into a single stream, that's the long term. Explore the options. You might come in as an AS and find that a PE is more your style. I know these acronyms don't mean much to a lot of you, but basically saying that you can change roles and responsibilities within the government as long as you make the efforts and to make those changes. So don't be afraid to try new things.
Do you have any thoughts, Elissa, to share on it, or do you think it was summed up?
They were perfect.
Okay. Yeah, and I think if you look at all the senior leadership in government, I wonder how many of them have only worked for one department. I'd say probably zero, right? So I think it's at my former department, the sense was, as long as you're staying within the federal government, it's a benefit to the federal public service. So moving around is not considered a bad thing always. Helen?
Yeah, I would say that too, that I mean, the whole purpose of the free agent program is for people to move around, and moving around is basically how I got to be where I am today. So like I said, I think 7 different roles in 5 different organizations in 10 years. That's intense. I don't recommend that people move around that much, but remember that I came in with a 20 years of professional experience as well. I guess it really depends. And there's a participant who just posted, like, sometimes, don't tell your manager, because if your manager doesn't support you, things can be made worse. And it's true. Like, there are managers out there who hurt employees when they identify that they want to leave. And if you moving on requires your manager's approval, then you kind of set yourself up in a hard situation. You can still apply on selection processes, and do that. Anyway, so, if it's not a good fit with your manager, then do whatever you can to find a new manager. And there's kind of 2 ways to find jobs within the public service. I know this isn't really what we're talking about here, but it's important to know that there's applying on selection processes, but there's also working your network and finding managers who are hiring in different parts of your organization, especially if you're in a big organization. And so that's why I say working your network is really important. Like, I constantly, I'm not even joking, I have every week a couple of people emailing me and saying, hey, Helen, I'm kind of sick of this job that I'm doing, or there's a problem. Do you know anyone else who's hiring? And then I do, because I, constantly kind of scanning for this stuff. So I just plug them and I introduce people to each other. So, make use of that informal. And then there's the GC tools that post jobs as well. So, but mobility is a really important part, especially if you're interested in progressing to an executive level. When we do executive development, we require that people move to different, at least business lines within an organization, or ideally 2 different organizations, because working for a central agency like Treasury Board, Privy Council Office, or even the school gives you a different perspective than working in a department, gives you then working in corporate services versus services to Canadians. All of those things matter. And as you move up, you want to have a really good, what we call horizontal understanding of the work, but also a really good vertical understanding of the work. So, if you're starting your career and your goal is executive, think about that. You're going to want to go deep on some subject matters, but you're also going to want to go broad. Government work is incredibly complex. And so, and like I said at the very start, the best way to learn about things is to actually do the work. So get yourself, use all these mobility by doing assignments, micro missions, take me with you, job shadowing, to try different things, especially in your early career. Don't be afraid to move around laterally. It's a great way to progress your career. You're not moving up, but that doesn't matter. There's lots of time to do that. Spend time understanding government. It's so complex. And then, when you move up, you'll have more of a clue of what interests you and where you can really contribute.
Definitely. Thank you, Helen. Okay, we've got some more questions here. I don't know if this exists. Is there an assessment tool that could help determine which courses we can take to get closer to our career goals, like this assessment tool robot, not a person? Any ideas?
That's an interesting question. I know there are assessment tools of which courses not to take. I've developed a few for the GPA plus courses I've developed. Are you this? But I'm not sure. Helen, do you know if there are? Other than what you've previously shared?
Yeah, like not an assessment tool that directs you to a job per se. Like there's sort of assessment tools that help you identify, a career interest or a path or an aptitude. And you like probably did those in high school, and they exist. There's lots of free ones on the internet. Apolitical even has one that kind of like, what kind of public servant are you? What sort of topics? So those exist, but they don't necessarily lead to, what courses you want. Like, frankly, and I think this is a gap in the public service, and I've talked about this a little bit, but it'd be great if we had career coaches, kind of like the guidance counselors that were in high school, the person who really understood kind of the landscape of government and helped someone who wasn't certain about where they would want to go, could help them do that. But we don't have that role right now, and it is a real gap. You can hire a career coach yourself, or you could try putting that on your plan. Like, what does a couple of sessions with a career coach cost? Build your business case. That's something that is a legitimate learning activity. Doesn't mean just because it's legitimate doesn't mean it's going to get approved. But if you're really confused and you're really struggling, you're just not sure, then there are professionals who can help you do that. So that's something you could try to access.
Great idea. Okay, and this one kind of goes more to the discussion piece of broaching the discussions with your manager. So how do we justify training, learning, professional development experience that isn't aligned with our current jobs, but will line up with the jobs we want to end up in?
Super great question. And I just kind of navigated that myself. The way I approached it was give a little, get a little. So I'm going to do these courses, which might not be my number one interest, but I know will benefit my team very well. But I also want to do this course. So, it's sort of like a give and take, right? And Helen keeps belaboring the point, and I think it's so important that everyone hears it. Your manager, while there to support you, also has to think of the greater team and the work being done. And if they're losing you to do something completely unrelated to, I got to stop gesticulating. I'm seeing myself disappear in here. It's only because I was supposed to support the school, but it's a negotiation process, and don't be afraid to negotiate and ask them, are there specific learning opportunities you would like me to take because you feel are beneficial to our team? Great. I will put the effort and I will do, the real work to get that done. But I would also like this piece, which might help develop my career 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. And give a little, get a little. We're all in this together, though.
I like that strategy. Give a little, get a little. Okay, we probably only have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So the top one here is, what should you do if you've been identified for talent management, but managers won't provide funding support? Now, I know we've talked about some different free things that you could do, but does anyone have some insight to share on this? Helen?
Yeah, so I've already expressed my opinions about talent development plans anyway. I think everyone should just operate as though they have one, which means, think of, get clear on what you want. What are the gaps? Think about what can address those gaps. Look for free things. Because I just say that because there's so much that there's a good chance that all your manager really will need to contribute is just a few hours here or there of your time. And then, refine your pitch and just keep coming around to it. Think about the budget cycles, just keep coming back to it. And eventually, maybe it's just not the right manager, it's not the right time, but don't give up on yourself. You're worth it. And also, I'm sorry that you have a talent management plan and it's led to nothing. That is not what it's supposed to happen. But in my experience, they're pretty much ineffective. So don't put your hopes on them. I just act as though you have one, everyone, all of you all deserve to be supported. And that process is really broken. So don't put much weight in it, I'm sorry to say.
I really appreciate your honesty and encouragement for everyone to operate like we just have a talent management plan and go for it. Build those business cases. All right, here's a good question. What are some good goals for mentorship? Or maybe desired outcomes, I guess. Things that if you're going into wanting, I guess there's formal mentorship, right? And informal mentorship, but what are the things that employees newer in their role could want to get out of mentorship? Elissa?
So what I do is I think about the things that I am not confident in and I would like to become more confident in, because usually if you have a mentor who has got a lot more experience and you look up to them as a role model, they are probably confident in that. And they can share with you how they became confident, what learning did they do, what experiences did they go through that they became confident. That has really helped me. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thanks so much. And we're gonna have to wrap up pretty soon here because we're approaching the end time. So I think that'll be the last question for the session. But I just want to thank the panelists today for you have such different perspectives and experience and for lending all of your insight to the participants. This has been a really engaging session. So thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. Links to resources that we've talked about can be found on the Career Bootcamp wiki page. And I think that's being put in the chat now, the link for that page. And right now, the participants, you can head over to the CBC 2022 networking event that's featuring Government of Canada communities and networks on the Wonder Me platform. The link's in the chat space as well, I believe. And make sure that you check out the last Career Bootcamp segment, CBC Power Panel, Ask Us Anything. There are bound to be some good questions. And I believe that's tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today.
This is a really amazing opportunity. Thanks so much. And thanks to all the organizers for all your hard work. It is such an important event. And I'm grateful for everyone who came too. And Elissa and Justin, so fun to meet with you.
Ditto. And thanks, Josh and Jen. Get me in on this again.
It always energizes me to be on a panel. So of you who came today, if you get energized from these sessions, the panelists and the speakers get energized too. It's so great. Thank you.
Definitely.